So as we sit here about 6 weeks out from NARPM Broker owner, it's incredible to think about how much that event has really changed our company. We had a big success there, and not only did we drive a financial immediate result, essentially doubling the size of our clientele, but we're still feeling a lot of these like brand lifts from it, like this trust in the market. But I've also recently heard that people are kind of like filling in their own narratives around what happened there. And I want to take this as an opportunity to give a little bit of like backstory of the way that I see business development. Because what happened there is essentially a culmination of like the last 10 years of what I've been like chasing as a thesis. So this episode is going to be a little backstory about me, and then kind of like a behind the scenes of why we got that big room and how it all went down. And I hope you enjoy it. There's not a lot of people that listen to this podcast. So I just kind of want to give a little behind the scenes for you who's paying attention to what I'm saying. I appreciate you. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. You may or may not know this, but I've spent the last 10 years of my life really betting on this thesis, a idea that I got from an insight that happened at my brother's funeral. And it all came from when 1,200 people showed up to his funeral. I had been spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to become more valuable. And I had realized that you build relationships by adding value to people. And I looked around and I saw all these folks that were there. And I thought to myself, wow, these 1,200 people have really helped us get through these last 2 years, his battle with pancreatic cancer, and are carrying us right now. And at that moment, I thought to myself, I could never leave this. This is too valuable. And what I didn't realize immediately at that moment, but it started to dawn on me soon thereafter, was that this value that had been created by this community of folks solved a major business outcome. It solved for churn. Because for the last about 10 years or so, I had been wondering whether I still wanted to, be Catholic, to be perfectly honest. And we don't need to get into all of that. But when I looked around and I saw that community, I thought I could never leave this. It solved for churn, and that got me thinking of this idea that community creation is this like massive ball of value that can create these results that you would have never thought possible, from the idea of like somebody that was forever thinking about leaving to never leaving again, to the insanity of supporting somebody through the loss of a loved one, to big business results, right? Like I remember thinking that if you got a Harley Davidson, you would never get a Honda motorcycle 2 years later because you lose your friends, right? Like that is a community solving for churn. And I've just kind of chased this thesis of doing that stuff for 10 years. I built a business off of it, and it came with this formula, right? One of the things that I realized was that any community, in order to do this, you have to be thinking about something bigger than yourself. My initial kind of success with this stuff happened with nonprofits, where I was building these like young professional groups. And when I was building these young professional groups, I was evangelizing kind of like the cause of the community, but I was also offering people connection in two interesting ways. One is connecting with people that care about something that you care about that is bigger than you. And two, I knew that if I had like a group of young professionals, I could host a small meeting in the boardroom of influential people in town, and I would approach like the board of directors on these different charities and say, hey, we want to plan our meeting. Can we have it at your boardroom, and can you come talk about your career so we can learn from you? And that got me kind of like understanding this idea that if you just get a couple of people united around something that's like interesting and bigger than themselves, you get access to people that you normally wouldn't have gotten access to. And I've just kind of parlayed that up and up and up through studying category design and kind of how these like movements are built by companies companies and how they change the future, and built a company off of the back of the idea that you can do this through content co-creation, right? Like if you are evangelizing something really meaningful and you invite people to like come onto like a podcast or a show or an event and speak on stage, and you invite a couple folks to it, and you do that over and over again, you start to develop these deep relationships with influential people while adding value to everybody in the ecosystem, particularly when you like repurpose this content and do all that, right? So I had built this marketing agency called Be The Stage doing this. My big like home run case study came with JWB Real Estate Capital, which is a 6,000 door property manager here in Jacksonville, Florida that does turnkey rental property investing, where we built a $40 million channel in a year. And now like 5 years later, it's completely changed their business. We host annual events and they're amazing. It's the true definition of community, and it's the same exact kind of concept. And that's what got me invited to speak at NARPM Broker Owner in 2024, which was kind of like my understanding that I had been part of this industry all along without knowing that I was. And that's, this idea that I've been able to do this is one of the reasons, if not the reason, that I've been able to do this, and that I have a certain level of understanding of the property management industry is the reason why Vendoroo approached me to join them. So fast forward to kind of where we were as a company in August when I joined Vendoroo. Vendoroo had already grown very fast. They went from like zero to $1 million in ARR in like 6 months. Amazing performance marketing, amazing product, all these different things, but having a really hard time penetrating kind of like into the NARPM ecosystem. Because as you know, in property management, people like to know that you've been around for a while and you've paid your dues, and they want to know that other people have used you and have trusted you. So I started implementing this thing, right? Like the thing that I do, the thing that I call the relationship flywheel. And first we showed up at multiple events second half of last year with this like podcast as a trade show booth, where I met some really, really interesting people. Namely, I met Jay Barabee, who is the speaker on AI stuff at conferences. And I knew that, if we were going to be known as a leader in the AI movement, that, he's a key relationship. And so, became friends with him. Honestly, man, Jay and I are like real tight, and I love Jay. But that's how it started, right? It started because we were doing content together, and that's kind of like what opened the doors to him. And he was walking around checking out AI softwares because he's an expert. He wants to know everything that's going on. The other thing that is really relevant to this equation, right? So like as we progressed through these different trade shows, kind of just built a network of other influential folks that would come on the podcast as a trade show booth, and made real friends. Eventually, Jay and I launched this AI summit, right? Like this like AI alliance that's still alive and well. And the message around it all, like we shifted kind of like the marketing of Vendoroo to talk about the importance of AI, right? Like we know that if we're going to build a community, we're going to get people to trust us, we got to be about more than just ourselves, right? So this is why this content stream exists. This is why the newsletter exists. I'm out there thinking really hard and talking to really intelligent people about how AI is going to affect the space, and putting out my best ideas for it. And I know that if you listen to this, you appreciate it, because maybe it's you or other folks that listen to this podcast come up to me when I go to events. They're like, this podcast is totally different. You're talking about different things. It's really appreciated. It's carrying the industry forward. I really appreciate that feedback. So that's one kind of like pillar thing, evangelizing things that are bigger than you. The other thing that I've found in like adding relationships and building community is you look to add value wherever you can. And when I keynoted NARPM Broker Owner last year, I got invited to speak to the CRMP, that NARPM designation. That's like the highest designation level. And they were all talking about how they were having a hard time kind of like selling more of these like high level designations. And ahead of me going on stage and talking about my thing, I gave them some advice on how to market it. And I said, again, you got to do things where you're like showing that you care about more than just the thing, right? Like you got to evangelize kind of like the problem it solves and the need for these designations. And there were, that room was pretty impressed, and they were just like, "Yeah, man, Gil, you should probably hire Pablo and Be The Stage to do this thing." And that never materialized. My price point was too high. I totally understand. It was tailored for a different kind of like thing. But once I joined Vendoroo, I knew that I could still help with this. And because my team came on board with Vendoroo, I knew that I could provide for NARPM what they need to market their designations based on the content that we create and things in that ecosystem, right? So once I joined Vendoroo, I started approaching NARPM as like, hey, we can do this, and it can be a Vendoroo sponsorship of the educational committee. And man, really chased that thing down at nationals, talked to Gail a bunch of times. Eventually, like one of the big blessings of my life has been meeting Lacey Hendricks, who introduced me to like all the right people there, because she wanted to see this happen, right? She's a big evangelist for NARPM and the value of NARPM. And eventually, after a lot of work, I traveled down in San Antonio. I did this like beta test of what it could look like at nationals, all on our own dime, created all this content so we could show the educational committee what we could create. And like 5 weeks before NARPM Broker owner, they got back to me and were like, yeah, actually, yeah, we want to do this. This makes sense, right? Like we love the content. I think if we do it a little bit better and have these conversations, do it. What do you need? And I said, okay, cool. In order to do this, I need a space. Like I need a space where I can like bring people to and have a bunch of these interviews that I do in order to create the content that I normally create. And they're like, great. I guess the best space for that would be this breakout room. And I was like, yeah, great. I'll take a breakout room. So I didn't know what that really meant. I just saw it on a floor plan. I needed to understand the scale. I flew to Colorado. I walked the room, and when I walk in there, I realized this is a 2,400 square foot space at the entrance of the expo hall. And for me to set up it's a super valuable space, obviously. So for me to set up just like a little corner of a stage to interview NARPM designees and do what I was going to do for NARPM was going to be super valuable for them, but it didn't feel right to waste all that space. So immediately the thought was, what can we do to create this really special? And again, my head went to, how do we evangelize something bigger than ourselves so that it's really interesting, so that people see value in it? And that's what we did. That whole AI Pavilion thing was a byproduct of them giving me too much space and me trying to figure out how to add value to the show, right? And what we ended up doing is, since we had created this AI Alliance, that gave us the license to create this like AI Pavilion structure, right? Where we created like a really interesting space for people to walk in and see quotes about AI and get the reports from Jay's State of the Industry AI report there. I offered it to the AI Alliance partners as ways that they could activate in the space. Blanket set up a table in there. Jay and Vendoroo set up kind of like interview spots, and they really made the most of that space. I know that other folks like Ben Severin came in and used it to like shoot some content and stuff like that, right? Like really just kind of like made this space as a service, and then drove a narrative in there, right? Like this idea of helping the industry understand that what's really going to change for them is when they start seeing AI as a labor force, as their last hire. That would be the highest value add thing that we could do. So, we ended up spending almost like 50 grand on all of this stuff in order to just not make this stuff suck, right? In order to not make waste of this area that they had given us, so it didn't look like a big empty room. And then of course in the back, we also had that NARPM stage where we ended up interviewing like 25 different CRMPs. And now what you're going to end up seeing is you're going to see all this like CRMP content that's going to go on the NARPM webpage as like why NARPM and like what makes NARPM awesome. They're going to be able to this isn't just CRMPs. It's anybody with a designation was invited to come. The CRMP thing is something that we're now working on. So a little preview to come. But, we're giving NARPM all these video assets that's going to go into this like campaign that we're helping facilitate for them. I'm going around different chapters and like doing this thing. It's a whole bunch of effort. My team has spent like 6 weeks post-editing this content that's going to be a campaign, a video campaign unlike anything I think that NARPM has ever really developed. And that's why we got the room, right? So what I've come to understand is this idea that if you can bring people along for something and try to maximize every opportunity that you can in a way that feeds the most mouths, you get the best results. And that activation in that room was literally the best result that I have ever produced in like 48 hours over my career. But it was really 6 months of this like adding value to the ecosystem, and still post it. It's been 6 weeks of editing videos by my team and quality controlling and taking meetings and making sure that everything is happening, and making sure that, the folks that got to use that room got what they wanted out of it. And yes, because of all of that, we had what felt like an unfair advantage, to be honest. Like when I would walk out of there, I was just like interviewing people back to back to back for this like NARPM stuff. And when I would walk out of there and I walk in the trade show hall, I'd be like, oh man, I forgot what it feels like to be in a trade show hall while I'm there, right? So that was very real to me. And because of that, I understand why, perhaps in the vendor space, this narrative around like, man, what did NARPM, what did Vendoroo do to like get that room and do all that? And I bet they paid a whole bunch of money and did all this stuff. The truth is, it was really a whole bunch of like scrappy work of, finding a way to add value and like all these things coming together. And yeah, at the end of the day, we did drop a decent amount of money into that room, but it wasn't money that we were spending to buy the room. It was money we were spending to like make sure that it didn't go to waste, and it didn't, right? Like it led to like a great financial result. And to me, the big thing here is the idea that the playbook of doing business development, the way that whether you're a property manager or you're a vendor in the space or you're in some other industry and you're trying to figure something else out, I think sometimes when we're so stuck in it and all we do is look at what other people are doing, all we're going to get is derivatives of those results, right? Like you might be able to do it a little bit better than somebody did and drive a slightly better result, or, maybe it's a little bit worse or the same. But if you can completely unlearn everything that you're supposed to be doing and look at things in a fresh way based on first principle insights, right? Like my first principle insights are, number one, always show up talking about something that is greater than myself, right? This change with AI, I so believe in. It's really going to like change everything. I'm not a property manager, but I care. I care about this idea that the world is going to change. Some people are going to get left behind. And equally as importantly, this is like a opportunity of a lifetime for people, right? And very little, unless you engage me talking about the Vendoroo product, I'm probably never going to bring it up to the chagrin of like maybe our founder and some other people on the team. But like, I mean, that's a truth. And then the other piece is figuring out ways, no matter what opportunity you have at hand, look around you and see how can you maximize the value for everybody involved, not just yourself. It would have been real easy for us when we got that room to just make that thing about Vendoroo, not the AI Pavilion, not bring other people on board. And while I'm sure from the outside looking in, that thing may have felt like the Vendoroo room because it was going so well for us, the truth of the matter is that like people wouldn't have come into that room if we weren't out there, talking about AI and had other partners that validated and built the trust in the market and did all these kinds of different things, right? So like those are like the first principle insights that I work off of all the time. And you as a business owner, as somebody, as a leader of people, I would encourage you to seek out your own insights, right? Like seek out what are the things you know to be true and go act on them, right? Like, and yes, they might be a little against the grain. They might rub some people the wrong way when they don't understand exactly what you're doing and they're kind of like looking at you crooked. But I really firmly believe that right now, as everything is changing, right? Like we are in the middle of an industrial revolution. We're in the middle of this giant context shift. Nobody knows what's coming. Right? Not even me. I don't know what's coming, even though I talk about it all the time. But acting on what you know to be true and prioritizing the people around you and finding win-wins, right? Like that triple win, like Second Nature likes to talk about. Those are first principles, right? And being passionate about a mission will always attract the best people. And beyond that, whatever tactic you choose to employ to create that, I don't give a shit if somebody says like, no, that's stupid. That's never going to work here. If you think it matches to it, try it. Because plenty of people told me that this wasn't going to work. Plenty of people told me that, you need to do it this way or that way, or you can't, you can't do that here kind of thing. But at the end of the day, the overall result is an overwhelming win for everybody involved and an overwhelming win for us. So do that in your business, right? Like chase those insights, help other people out, do what you think is the right move as opposed to like what's cool and what everybody else is doing. And that's really the only way that you're going to get these extraordinary results, and extraordinary results are there to be had. So take them.